One big thing today, been a rough few days for you, Rusty. Been a rough few days for a lot of us who got to know and love Sandy Heidtke, who passed away, I believe, a week ago. A week ago today, from a long battle with cancer. A Consol girl, a diehard red-ass Aggie fan, and Aggie, who went to school, got her degree here. An amazing wife, mother, and woman of God. You got an opportunity, Rusty, to write and deliver on her at her funeral an amazing tribute, which, by the way, you crazy dog, had 0 grammatical errors. Vanessa must have read it over for you. But kind of give me your thoughts right now. I mean, normally we start with 3 big things, but obviously this morning there's just one big thing on our minds, and especially your mind coming in, and that's the life of Sandy Heidtke.
Yeah, Gabe, I appreciate it. I really, it was such an honor to be able to talk and to be able to give that eulogy, because I considered her truly my best friend in the world, and she was more like a sister than anything else to me. We had just, and I have a younger sister who's a great sports fan, and I'm very, very close to her. But Sandy was like my older sister, and she and I just had a very, very special bond. And, you know, she's 49 years old, and she's having back pain, and she goes to the doctor finally, and she and I would talk 3, 4, 5 times a week sometimes. Even if it was just exchanging a text or 2 a day, or sometimes, you know, we'd talk 20, 30 minutes. And she had been telling me about her back problems, and she had some, and she was in great shape. She ran practically every day. And I said, and she worked out a lot. I said, you probably just overdid it at the gym. And that's what she thought too. And then she finally went in, and, you know, long story short, they found 20 tumors from her head down to her legs. And, you know, stage 4 cancer, melanoma. They think it probably went through her eyes. There was nothing outwardly ever visible, you know, like you'll see a melanoma a lot of times, like Casey's story, that you know, she was saved by someone seeing something.
It's a great thing when you actually have a spot. In Sandy's case, there were no evidence.
Yeah, there was no evidence. So it went from, you know, I'm in great shape, got the rest of my life in front of me, to you know, having an expiration date. And like she and I used to joke about, like, you know, expiration date you'd find on a milk carton, because it was so quickly. And they said, you know, some people said 6 months, some people said, you know, a year. No one gave her a year and a half, which is what she lived to. But she fought. And it was a great honor for me to be able to talk to so many people and share my stories with her, because she's an amazing, amazing person. And she and John had an amazing marriage. And she, you know, a lot of people always say, hey, you know, I love Texas A&M with all my heart. And Sandy was about as good an Aggie as there possibly could be. She loved A&M. She bled maroon. You know, she and John met when she was a freshman, and then John graduated, and he had to go all over the place doing interns and early jobs. So she left, and they were living in Coppell when he finally landed a job with HSE, the predecessor to Fox Sports.
Right.
And Sandy,
the greatness of HSE,
she wanted that Aggie ring so bad. She not only wanted to graduate, she wanted to graduate from Texas A&M in College Station. There was no online stuff. She drove back and forth. She moved in with her parents. She spent, you know, just all kinds of time down here to get that Aggie ring. So she loved this place. But she didn't love it with all her heart, you know. The greatest thing about Sandy is that her priorities were always in order. And she left an incredible legacy, because she loved the Lord with all her heart. She loved her family, and, you know, then I'd say thirdly was her friends in Texas A&M, and so many of her friends were Aggies.
I'll never forget taking her to Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis for Butler's championship game. I went, Final Four, saw her at a bar right next to our hotel right after that, told her about the experience of going there and watching Butler in a watching party where Butler plays at the historic Hinkle Fieldhouse, where Oscar Robertson played the state championship game. And Hoosiers was filmed. And so she was so fired up. She had her best friend with her, who was an Aggie from out of state, Debbie. And so the two of us went. I remember talking to my wife. I'm like, yeah, I'm taking these 2 ladies to Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Well, it might have been Jennifer. It was either Debbie.
It was Jennifer.
She considered Debbie, Jennifer, and I. There's a picture we have, the 3 of us. It was actually the 4 of us. Sandy, her last trip to Kyle Field, that it'll always mean so much to all 4 of us.
I'll never forget. Just, it doesn't take long. It never took long for you to feel the warmth from Sandy Heidtke, and all the way through her life, she continued to smile all the way until her last moments. And she's such a fighter, so passionate, and she's going to have 3 kids at Texas A&M, I believe, next year. Hannah, Hunter, and Heath.
3 weeks before her funeral on a Friday, I'm so glad I did this. I took off work and went up and drove to Coppell, and the end was near, and she was as thin as that pen you're holding, Gabe. Yeah. And she was laying in bed. She was too weak to get up out of bed. And John was the epitome of loving and honoring, the wedding vow they took in 1983 to honor and cherish and care for her in sickness and in health. And he did to the very end. And I love that man. And what a tribute, to their Christian faith that he made to all of us by caring for his wife. But she grabs my hand, and she grabs it, and the first thing she says is, "I'm not done. I'm not fighting. I'm not through done fighting."
Yeah.
No one else believes me, but I got more fight in me. And I told her, I was like, well, then I ain't giving up either. And the second thing she said, and, life possibly running out, was, "Can you believe somebody hired Bobby Petrino again?" And the third
That's great.
And the third thing she said is, "Where do you think Johnny's going to go?"
Really?
So, she loved her life. She loved her Lord. She loved her kids. She loved talking football. She loved listening to you guys. And she was 5 Aggies on the TexAgs board, and she loved TexAgs. And
no
she
doubt.
loved to be able to travel. But she loved, really more than anything, the people she met. And Olin wrote such a beautiful piece about her.
Yeah, he did.
And I thanked him for doing that, because Olin barely knew her. And I told him, I said, it's one of the gifts of Sandy. It's one of the beautiful things about her. I only knew her for 17 years, really. A little less than 17 years. And yet I felt like she was my sister, and I had grown up with her. And at her funeral, they were showing pictures of her childhood in the early 80s when she and John got married, and it just hit me. It's like, I didn't know her until 1997, and yet I felt so close to her. And, it didn't surprise me. I joked with her. I said, because she sent me a picture last June when she had come back from the NBA Finals, and she had gone down to see the Spurs. She loved the Spurs. And she had gone down there. She felt awful. Well, unbeknownst to her, she was bleeding internally because she had a volleyball-sized tumor on her spleen. Volleyball-sized. And here's this small woman. You know how she was. She was in great shape. And I told her, I said, there's nothing small about you except for your frame, because you got the biggest heart, and you got the biggest voice, and you got the biggest personality. So why wouldn't you have the biggest tumor? And she just kind of laughed about that. She sent me a picture of that tumor. She said, "Hey, this is your souvenir."
Yeah, that's great. Rusty, great tribute. You did a great job with it. We'll all miss Sandy, but she's not hurting anymore.
No,
that's what's important.
No, and that's what I was able to say is the greatest thing about Sandy is the legacy she left. And, the Sidewalk Prophet song, "Live Like That," someone sang that, did a beautiful rendition of that at her funeral. And there's a few lines in there. I want to live like that and give all I have, so that everything I say and do points to you, and you being Jesus Christ. And she did. And so that funeral was truly a celebration.
Yep.
And so that is what was great about it. But I'll miss her.
And you got to tell John Daniels the Rangers need another pitcher.
Yeah, on Sandy's behalf. He was there, and so I saw him walking by, and I said, hey, she also loved the Rangers too. And on Sandy's behalf, John, we'd all feel more comfortable with one more starting pitcher.
Yes, we would. That's good stuff.